Welcome to a new type of conversation. With each episode, we'll meet with inspiring people sharing best practices at the forefront of creating change for our young people. We'll talk motivations that make a difference and how their lived experience can help empower us to take action and make a difference in the lives of young people where we live. My name is CJ Sturmer, and this is the Champions for Youth podcast. Have you ever wondered why some messages seem to stick with young people while others just disappear into the noise? And how it seems that no matter what we do, we just can't seem to move the needle. Today, we're talking with Jeff Jordan, founder, president, and CEO of Rescue Agency, to learn what really works when it comes to inspiring young people to make healthier choices. That it's not just about making one great ad anymore or a one-size-fits-all mindset. It's about going beyond awareness if we want to create effective campaigns. Join me as we unpack their evidence-based approach to marketing through authentic storytelling and meeting youth where they are. Whether you work in public health, education, or simply care about shaping a healthier future, we're empowering you to learn what it takes to build a movement and effectively create change. Jeff, tell us about Rescue Agency. What is Rescue Agency and what is their mission?
Yeah, so Rescue is a health behavior change agency. And so what that means is that we're a marketing agency like any other. We do all the things that marketing agencies do, but we only do it for positive health behavior change and pretty much work almost exclusively with government agencies similar to the Virginia Foundation for Healthy Youth.
What are some of the programs that Rescue Agency helps develop?
We work on programs that are focused on pretty much every age range, beginning with programs that are helping parents with their 0 to 5 kids, all the way up to teens, which is where a lot of our work started, young adults and adults of various groups in various life stages, helping them with different decisions that they might be making at that time, different risks that they might be facing that we can help them make a healthier decision on, and really just empowering people within those different age groups and categories and different kinds of communities on how to make the healthier choice that makes sense for them.
What kind of created this idea for Rescue Agency? Was there a situation in life where we decided, we need to do something? We need to create a moment where we can combat an issue?
When I was in high school, I volunteered for an anti-tobacco group in Las Vegas, where I grew up. And that was a youth tobacco prevention program. At the time, there were a lot of them all around the country. The Master Settlement Agreement had just happened, and a lot of community organizations were realizing that, we should engage young people in this quest to reduce teen smoking. Back then, teen smoking was 25-30% around the country. And so I joined this group when I was 16, and I loved it because it was marketing. And I knew I wanted to do marketing when I grew up, but I didn't know, that marketing could be used for good in this case. And volunteered, quickly kind of became a leader of the group with my outspokenness as a teen. And then the group needed additional things. They wanted to do events, they needed web design, they needed graphic design, and I happened to have friends who did a lot of these things. And so I was already leading their events. I went from a volunteer to become a part-time worker when I was in high school there at the health district. And then when they needed more items, I said, well, how about, instead of being a part-time worker, how about you just hire me as an agency, just contract me. And they were brave, and so they did it. And we were able to start really small, with just making some flyers, making some designs and some events with my friends. And one of the things that we noticed as we started doing that work was, the health district also had a marketing agency that they worked with. And what we noticed was left and right, this marketing agency really didn't know how to speak to youth authentically. Right? They know how to make stuff, they knew how to make commercials or make events or do all these things, but they were just not speaking to the right youth. And the first event that they hosted, which was like a big youth summit, spent a ton of money, pretty much almost our entire year's budget went to this big youth summit. And I went there as the youth leader and I was like, hey, none of these teens are ever going to smoke. I can tell you right now, these teens are good. They're well behaved. They have, they're working on their college application. That's why they're here. None of them have even thought of smoking a cigarette. And so it was like, I know that 30% of teens smoke, but it's not this 30%. Mm-hmm. So why are we talking to them? And to the marketing agency, it was very much like, well, teens are teens. As long as we're talking to any teens, it's going to be effective. But fortunately, the woman who worked at the health district, her name is Maria, she was just a few years older than me. And she also was like, yeah, these are not the at-risk teens. I'm like, I know, they're not the at-risk teens. So why are we doing this? Why are we doing it this way? So they only worked with that agency 1 year. And it was an agency that did work around the country at that time for tobacco prevention. And she said, let's do it differently. What do you recommend? How do you want to do it? And she really took a lot of risks in bringing us on and kind of allowing me to take the lead on that. And so that really allowed me to kind of try out different things and to kind of start to develop these ideas about how people are different and how some of the differences in values and culture and the groups that they identify with, their peers, how that affects the decisions that they're making. And that really set the stage for us to work for the foundation. So a couple years of kind of, trial and error, working on different things, helped me understand what a model really looked like. A model for reaching at-risk young people in an authentic way that made them excited to talk about not smoking, excited about the idea of being non-smokers, about being proud to be non-smokers. And so when we came across an opportunity with the foundation here, we were able to present that really freshly learned knowledge and just kind of say, look, any marketing agency you go to, they're going to make you some splashy teen campaign, but they're going to sell it the same way they sell, shoes and soda, right?
Yeah.
It's not going to take into account which teens actually need to hear your message, what they care about, which teens don't really need to hear from you because they're already not smoking, et cetera. And so I think that's what really appealed to the foundation was that we understood teens at a different level and could use their resources, which are limited, just like any other public health organization. All resources are limited. So how we could use those limited resources on the teens who needed to hear it from us the most. And that really began this journey together with the foundation of a lot of research, a lot of on-the-ground work, a lot of engagement of young people in very different ways to understand how to insert health behaviors and pride around those health behaviors, empowerment around those health behaviors within many different kinds of youth in Virginia.
Have you seen that change over time? Like thinking about Rescue's origin story, right? And then understanding that we need to continue to, I'll say the word evaluate, right? Yeah. How have you seen Rescue's mission evolve and the public health space evolve since its origin?
Yeah. I think when we started and we were working primarily on cigarette smoking, it felt like we had more time. More time because, of course, we don't want a teen to smoke a single cigarette, but a single cigarette wasn't going to kill them. So we had time to, even if they did that one cigarette or those 5 cigarettes or however many, we still had time to change them. We still had time to make progress. And fast forward to today, where we're dealing with things like fentanyl, that one pill could kill them.
Right.
And so we're in a very different environment where we may not have time to really build that trust, build that identification, for them to really see us as a part of their group, a part of their identity. So we have to find ways in that hit faster and that cause a bigger and faster aha moment. And technology has also changed a lot, right? So we've gone from mainly doing events and kind of just having to go out there to find teens to where now we're 90% of our work's on social media because that's where teens are. And so I would say the biggest changes have been that the messaging and the way in has to be so much faster, so much more precise and on point. We're so much easier to ignore today.
Right.
So you really got to resonate. You really got to talk about something that they care about in a way that they care about it. So we're looking at things like, well, what are the formats of videos they look at on Reels and on TikTok and stuff like that? And how can we make messages that emulates that more, that feel more like content rather than feel like ads.
Right.
And that's a hard transition for adults too, because, adults are like, we're making ads. Ads look a certain way. Well, not anymore. Ads shouldn't feel like commercials anymore. Ads need to feel like they're just a part of the content I'm consuming.
And the work that you all do you think that's made it even more difficult to try to meet them where they are? Because you can target on social media, and before we could show up to an event and advertise and get people promote, like you would any event.
Yeah.
Has that made it even more difficult to actually be able to speak to somebody organically and authentically?
Yeah. It gives you more opportunities, right? Because now we can reach almost any single youth in the state, no matter how rural, how much at home they are, no matter how, right? Before it's like, well, we need them to watch certain TV shows or we need them to go to certain events or whatever. Now it's like, they're all there. They're all on these social channels. But everyone is there. So you got to break through, across millions of videos. And so what that does is it really creates a need for a lot more content where we maybe would have made one ad. Now we need to make 5 to 10 videos to grab different attention, have more chances of grabbing them and getting their attention. But the bigger opportunity too is that if you do it right, then there's a huge opportunity for sharing. Before, no one could share a commercial, right? You see it on TV, well, you can't share it. If you liked it, you're just like, I liked it. Great, done. Now it's like, whoa, this happened to my friend. I'm going to share it with my 5 friends, and those 5 friends are going to share it with others, right? So it's like it's the reward system for us advertisers is so much more both brutal in that no one could watch what you put out there, or also lucrative in that if you really nail it, you could get a video that you only put a little bit of money behind, but it went to so many more teens because it resonated with them and they wanted to comment on it and share it and spread it within their community.
So there's also more opportunity then to also create noise. Like if you're not focusing and really paying attention to where you are, you could just be wasting money and time.
Exactly. And yeah, I mean, we saw so much money being wasted when we started just on TV ads that people were forced to watch. But they weren't making a difference because they weren't really identifying with teens. Now today, they won't even finish it. You know, they won't even stay and watch it because it's not something they want to watch.
They have the thumb. They got too much thumbing.
Yeah.
You talked about research, and I think that's something that a lot of folks sometimes tend to forget because they just want to go out there and they just want to do based on what they think they hear, what is the status quo and what the issue is. Can you talk a little bit more about the research itself and what people should be doing, and why is that so important?
So I think with research, you know, we often get caught up on needing to do scientific, you know, big validated studies. And look, when you can afford those are great. That's what's going to go in a journal. That's what's going to get written up. That's what's going to spread. But a lot of us can't afford that, especially these smaller programs. And so we really need to get to the basics of, well, what is research and what are we really talking about? What we're talking about is recognizing that not everyone thinks and feels the same things you think and feel, and the same things they all think and feel, right, across each other. And so in prevention, just because we are all very passionate about whether it's not smoking or vaping, not using drugs, you know, not using marijuana as a teen, whatever that issue is, even though we have our own reasons, we might be passionate about it, we might care about it, that doesn't mean that those reasons will resonate with your audience.
Right.
So research is about taking a step outside of your values and your worldview and understanding your audience's values and worldview. And if you can't afford to do a big study, well, you can at least afford to go and talk to some teens in an informal way. That's research. You know, preferably go beyond your own kids or nieces or nephews or grandkids or whoever they are, because they're always going to be biased because they know you, and so they might just be trying to get a rise out of you saying crazy things. You know, so if you can go to strangers, that's always ideal. But just with an open mind, ask open-ended questions, create a safe space for them, and listen to what they have to say. Ask about their friends. You know, what are some things that they've seen, reasons why they think people are, why some of their friends are using and things like that. Don't ask them like what they would do because, hey, they're not marketing experts, right? Instead, ask them about their lived experience. Ask them about what's going on in their lives, why some people are making these choices. And what you'll realize is that these behaviors are a lot more complicated, and changing them is going to be a lot more nuanced. It's not going to be about just telling people not to do something, but it's going to be about trying to connect their values with the behaviors you want them to do, and that's going to take an understanding of their values first.
Kind of thinking about that, right? We started here over time, and now it's just the list of really things that we have to consider when developing these campaigns, these ads, these messages for the people when we try to meet them where they are. We often hear strain on resources, strain on funding, strain on staffing, strain on just trying to get it accomplished and trying to avoid the idea of checking a box and just getting it done.
Right.
How do we empower to really kind of think locally but be able to accomplish the same things with sometimes such limited resources?
Yeah. I think that's a really important, you know, consideration because there's so many community organizations, so many health departments, statewide organizations, all kind of, you know, worried about the same issues. And instead of all trying to do everything, we really have to look at what's each organization best suited to do and how can we borrow and use what each other are using, right? So like the state and the foundation are putting out, you know, this great content for these topics on social media, all of that. How can a local organization use that content? How can you help spread that? You know, maybe you have a group that meets and that does peer-to-peer education and things like that. How can they take these videos and things that have been created by the state and improve, you know, the strength and quality of what they're doing on the ground, rather than maybe use half your budget to make one video that possibly no one can see because you didn't have a media budget to go with it, or you didn't have another piece to go with it.
Okay.
So I think it's trying not to all step on each other's toes and do the same thing, but instead each find our lane and then see how we can connect those lanes to all benefit.
Collaborate, don't reinvent the wheel.
Exactly.
Yeah. Do you have an aha moment or maybe a memory that sticks out into your mind when you think, wow, what we're really doing here is making a difference in someone's life?
You know, when we were still working on cigarettes with teens, we had a really, really cool campaign here that in Virginia called Psych that went on for, I think, close to eight to 10 years. Wow. And that campaign was specific for teens who listen to like rock, alternative music, and we worked with a lot of bands. Probably 24 like real bands who didn't smoke and were more than happy to tell everybody, hey, I don't smoke and here's the reasons why I don't smoke. And what was really powerful about that campaign, and I really loved, was that, you know, it never felt overly polished. It was never this big flashy campaign. There was never this kind of clever message or whatever. It was just, here's a band that teens in Virginia trust, saying, hey, you know what? Even though we look like someone you think would be a smoker, we're not. And we don't do it for this reason. We don't do it because of animal testing, or we don't do it because of our lungs, because we need stamina to go on tour. We don't do it because we don't like how it smells. We don't do it because of, and just teens hearing from within their culture, just kind of the change that made for them and the pride that they had. You know, we would have teens working for us at these events, rock shows that we would go to with these bands, and they were just so proud. Right? Imagine a teen with like spiky bleached hair and earrings and blah, and all these crazy clothes, so proud to be against smoking. And it's like, it's exact opposite of who you would think would be out there fighting against teen smoking, but it was passionate for them because their influencers, their role models were all passionate about it too. And I think that was really cool of what you can accomplish when you really hone in on an at-risk group, because they were the most likely group to smoke. You know, we did studies every 2 years, another study, they were the most likely to smoke, until we brought them down to pretty much down to average, because we got into their culture and we created something that was authentic just for them. Didn't try to reach everybody at the same time, didn't oversimplify it, didn't try to be all, you know, just clever in what we were saying. We were just real.
Yeah.
And they really loved that.
So you mentioned it was like an 8-year campaign. Did it take that long to actually sort of feel that energy there? Or was it something that was like, hey, really quickly we started to notice this change?
I think really quickly, once we started to get those first bands engaged, we really started to see some high engagement. The bands were, you know, clamoring to work with us at events. People were talking about it. I mean, towards the end of the campaign, we even had like our own festival one year because so many bands were affiliated with the campaign that they were just like, yeah, what's Psych doing next? What are we doing? And imagine just a giant festival with 12 bands, and everybody there is just talking about how horrible cigarette smoking is. You know, it's like it's crazy that a health organization could accomplish that.
Yeah, that doesn't happen.
No.
What does the future look like? Not maybe just for public health, but like, what should we be really thinking about on the horizon? You know, there's additional issues that are coming up, whether it be opioid and fentanyl. Where should we, in your opinion, should we really be focusing our attention on where we should be making a greater impact?
I think we have to recognize that mental health is so much more an obvious part of everything that's going on now. Mental health has always been there, right? It's always been connected to why young people use substances. But today, young people recognize and are more connected to how they feel and how their friends feel and what's going on. Since COVID, there's more issues happening with lack of connectedness and people spending too much time online and too much time on their phone, which started before COVID. But so the connection between mental health and pretty much every single topic that we want to talk about is so critical to understand and to not just kind of paint over and oversimplify. Like, there are kids who are struggling and are using substances because they are struggling. And if we ignore that, then it not only feels really inauthentic, but can increase shame, can increase, you know, a lot of just like self-loathing and things like that, because they may say like, they may feel guilty that they think they need a substance, you know? And so the more, like, mental health is the key to solving so many public health challenges. But it's also the hardest, and it's sensitive, and it's difficult to talk to minors about their mental health and all of that. And so, but it's there. If we're going to be champions for youth, we have to be champions for youth mental health.
Yeah. You said something about just like kind of brushing over it. And I think, at least in the conversations I have, I do feel like that's the case. I feel like people are just saying, oh, yeah, mental health is important. And they're just talking about therapy. And I feel like that's not enough. And so is there like a recommendation or like how do we empower people to actually, okay, well, we want to talk about that. Yes, we're on the same page. But what does that actually mean? Like, where do we meet that where it is?
Yeah. I think that the very first, there's this wall around mental health. And even though people are talking about it, people are acknowledging it, and they're accepting of each other, there's a lot of, this whole sense of like, it's okay not to be okay, but we say it about others. It's okay if you're not okay, but it's not okay if I'm not okay.
Right.
There's still this shame around me saying I am not okay and I need support and I need help. So even though this generation feels like the most mental health, empathetic, supportive group, right, they still struggle to really pinpoint what they are personally feeling and do so in a way that isn't embarrassing, that doesn't feel like they're less than or that's their fault, etc. And so one of the things we're learning is that really helping them understand how mental health works, just kind of biologically, chemically, that it's these things inside of us that are all automatically working, right? Like you didn't think your way into depression, you didn't think your way into anxiety, right? There's chemicals, there's neurons, there's things happening in your body, and they're happening for a reason. And you can actually work with that. You can understand what those reasons are, change some of those reasons, and in turn change how your body is feeling and acting. That can be really empowering because right now what teens are feeling is that it's their fault that they feel this way. And they want to numb it, they want to run away from it, they want to escape it. Yeah. And if you try and talk to them about it, there's kind of this wall because it's like, I'm not even ready to admit I'm feeling these things. And so I'm not ready to talk to you about my substance use because then I'd have to admit to myself that I feel like I need this substance to make myself feel better. So you almost have to kind of try and go around that and say kind of like, hey, did you know how it is that like stress works, how it is that your stress response system works, how you could be like near breaking points all the time and this and that. And that can be really enlightening and empowering to young people because suddenly they're like, oh, it wasn't my fault that I'm feeling this way. And there is something I can do about it. It's like, wow, I have so much more control than I thought I did.
Right, calling out all the layers to it.
Yeah.
So many layers. We say this a lot, but I think you bring up a good point of actually recognizing that there is a whole human involved, not just with different prevention or education or awareness, but in your own brain.
And not only a whole human, but a life's worth of experiences that have shaped how that human looks at the world. Yeah. Yes, exactly. Since birth.
One final thought. What is the biggest piece of advice that you could offer to this room of people?
I could say, take a moment and step away from your own beliefs and values and worldviews. Like, we know why you're doing this. We know you care. We know that why you're passionate about this. And that's all great. That got you here. But now you got to step aside. And let those values sit over there. This is why I am against drug use. This is why I am against smoking, whatever it is. And now go to your audience with a blank slate, with no preconceived notions, no judgments, no thoughts about how they should act or whatever, and just listen to them. Because it's our own judgments that often get in our own way of really understanding what can be a path forward for a specific audience. And there's going to be many different paths to get to the same behavior. They never have to fully agree with you to do the thing you want them to do, right? You may not smoke for one reason, and I may not smoke for a whole different reason. All that matters is that we both don't smoke. That's what matters. And so put your reasons aside and listen to where they're at, because that will give you all the answers. That's the key there.
Just hush and listen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Jeff. I really appreciate it. You give us a lot to think about and how Rescue continues to do the great work to really try to create some positive behavior change and meet people where they are. So I really appreciate you taking that time.
No problem. Thanks, CJ.
I gotta say, it's so refreshing to know marketing still works. We just have to get out of our own way and listen to what young people want. Thanks to the Virginia Foundation for Healthy Youth and Prevention Connections for making this happen, and to Mauricio Reyes from Telekinet for the music. Be sure to check out other episodes or join us for one of our webinars. You can find those at vfhy.org. And don't forget to share with others. The only way we can make real change is if we do it together. And one more thing. We're still new to the podcast world, and it would mean a lot if you took a second to give us a 5-star rating and tell us what you think. I appreciate you all for listening today, and no matter what you do in this world, go out there, go do good. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time.